I never imagined that life could fall apart so quickly. At the age of 29, I felt at the height of my marketing career, working for a large company that, until then, seemed to be my destiny. But in the blink of an eye, everything changed. That fateful morning, I was called to the boss's room. I knew something was wrong as soon as I saw the look of pity in his eyes. Emily, you know the company is going through restructuring, and unfortunately we need to cut some costs. Unfortunately, your department will be one of those affected. His words echoed in my mind, each syllable piercing my heart like a sharp knife. I got fired. Back in my empty apartment, reality began to set in. Loneliness became palpable. Every corner of the apartment seemed darker and colder. My mind, already weakened by past events, plunged deeper into an abyss of sadness and despair. The bed became my refuge, and the curtains closed, my shield from the outside world. Sarah, my childhood friend, was one of the few people who insisted on visiting me. Emily, please, you need to get out of this bed. Let's go for a walk, get some fresh air, she suggested, with a forced smile that didn't hide her concern. I have no energy, Sarah. I don't feel like doing anything, I replied, my voice a barely audible whisper. We'll get through this together, Emily. I'm here for you, always, she promised, holding my hand firmly. But as much as I wanted to believe his words, I felt unable to react positively. The nights were the worst. The darkness seemed to amplify my negative thoughts, and insomnia became my constant companion. On one of these particularly difficult nights, while looking at the ceiling, I heard a noise coming from the corridor of the apartment. Curious and a little alarmed, I opened the door to find Jack, my war veteran neighbor, sitting on the floor, fiddling with some gardening tools. Hi, Emily. Is that okay? He asked, noticing my emotional state. Not much, Jack. I'm actually not well at all, I admitted, feeling tears fill my eyes. He stood up and approached, with an understanding look. I know how it is. I've been there. The war leaves deep marks, and the return to normal life is not easy. How did you manage to survive? I asked, genuinely curious. I found a hobby that helped me keep my mind occupied. Gardening, you think? He said, with a soft smile. Have you tried? Gardening? No, it never crossed my mind, I replied, a little skeptically. It may sound silly, but caring for plants has given me a purpose. Maybe I can help you too, he suggested, with a gleam of hope in his eyes. That night, his words were etched in my mind. Could gardening really be the solution to my pain? I had nothing to lose. Perhaps caring for something alive would help me find a little light in the darkness that enveloped me. And so, with a spark of hope, I decided to give the unexpected a chance. When Jack mentioned gardening, I confess my first reaction was one of disbelief. Me? Gardener? I thought, as I looked at my gnawed nails and trembling hands. But at the same time, there was a small spark of curiosity in me. Maybe it was desperation seeking a lifeline. The next morning, I decided to give it a try. I had nothing to lose after all. I grabbed my coat and headed to the nearest garden store. The atmosphere was strange to me, but also welcoming in a way I couldn't explain. The shelves were filled with seeds, pots of all sizes, tools and bags of earth. I walked down the aisle, smelling the earthy smell that emanated from the products. I chose sunflower seeds, basil and mint, as well as some basic tools, a small shovel, a watering can, and a pair of gloves. When I got home, I put the purchases on the table and stared at them for quite a while. And now, I murmured to myself. The feeling of worthlessness began to creep in again, but I tried to push it away. I went to the yard and began to prepare the soil, following the instructions on the seed package. But, as with all new things, frustration soon set in. The soil didn't seem to cooperate, and I couldn't get the seeds to the right depth. It was then that I heard Jack's voice from the other side of the fence. "Do you need help, Emily?" he asked, with a gentle smile on his face. "Actually, yes," I replied, trying not to sound desperate. "I have no idea what I'm doing." Jack came into my backyard and started showing me the basics. "You need to loosen the soil first, like this," he said, picking up the shovel and demonstrating. "Then make small holes with your finger, place the seed, and cover lightly with soil. And do not forget to water." As he spoke and showed, I realized there was something therapeutic about the way he moved the soil, the patience and care with which he handled each seed. We move on together, planting each seed calmly. The sun was starting to set when we finished. "Now just wait and watch," Jack said, putting his hand on my shoulder. "Plants have their own time." In the days that followed, I devoted myself to tending the small garden. I watered the plants every day and watched for any signs of growth. At first it seemed that nothing was happening, which made me discouraged. But Jack always stopped by to offer words of encouragement. "Nature knows what she's doing, Emily. We just need to be patient." On a sunny afternoon, Sarah appeared by surprise. "Hey, Emily. How do you do?" she asked, with a warm smile. "I am trying," I replied, pointing to the garden. Sarah's eyes widened. "You're really gardening? How amazing!" "Yeah, I'm trying something new," I said, feeling a little pride grow inside me. A few weeks passed, and finally I began to notice small changes. Sunflowers began to sprout, their green leaves emerging timidly from the earth. The herbs also showed signs of life. It was slow progress, but there was something comforting in seeing that my efforts were not being in vain. On one of these visits, Jack brought a small lavender seedling. "I thought you might like to add this to your garden. Lavender is known for its soothing properties." "Thank you, Jack. I don't know what I would do without your help," she said, sincerely grateful. "You're doing a great job, Emily." "Remember that," he replied, with an encouraging smile. The garden became my refuge. Every new leaf that came out was a small victory, a sign that maybe there was hope for me too. And little by little, I felt that something inside me began to change. It wasn't a magic cure, but a sense of purpose and accomplishment that I hadn't felt in a long time. Sarah continued to visit me regularly, and on one of those visits, she commented, "You look different, Emily. It's good to see you like this." "Thank you, Sarah. I think I'm starting to find my way," I replied, feeling a new confidence in my words. And so, with Jack's help and Sarah's support, I took the first step toward my own healing. Gardening, which initially seemed like an absurd idea, became the seed of new hope in my life. I was beginning to feel a twinge of pride as I looked out at my little garden. The plants, which initially seemed as fragile and disheartened as I was, now showed signs of life and vigor. It was as if we shared the same journey of recovery and growth. However, life always seemed to have a way of challenging us when we least expected it. One morning, as I went out to water my plants, I noticed something strange. The leaves were full of small holes, and some looked wilted. My heart tightened. "What's going on here?" I muttered to myself, alarmed. Jack was pruning his roses on the other side of the fence and must have noticed my worried expression. He approached, wiping his dirty hands of dirt on a rag. "Trouble in paradise?" he asked, with a corner of his mouth smile. "Me. I think there's something wrong with my plants," I replied, pointing to the damaged leaves. Jack leaned over to take a closer look. "Oh yes. It looks like you have an aphid infestation. These little monsters can be quite destructive if left unchecked." I felt a lump in my throat. "And what do I do now? I've barely started and I'm already failing." He put a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Hey, don't worry. Every gardener faces this at some point. Let's work it out together." That afternoon, Jack and I worked side by side, examining each plant, removing aphids manually and applying a natural solution he taught me to prepare. During the work, the conversation flowed naturally, and it was there that he shared something profound. "I never told you, but gardening saved my life," he began, his voice low. "After I came back from the war, I was a wreck. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Every night the nightmares came back, and I couldn't find peace anywhere." I stopped fiddling with the plants and looked at him, surprised. Jack always seemed so strong and sure of himself. "That's when I started messing with plants," he continued. "At first, it was just a way to distract me. But over time, I realized that gardening gave me something I didn't have, a purpose, a reason to get out of bed every morning." I was silent for a moment, absorbing his words. "I never would have imagined that," he finally said. "You always seem so stable." He laughed softly. "Believe me, Emily, we all carry our own burdens. But finding something we're passionate about can make all the difference." Jack's story touched me deeply. If he, who faced horrors I couldn't even imagine, found peace in gardening, maybe I could too. I decided at that moment to devote myself even more to my garden. It wasn't just about the plants, but about myself, about finding a new purpose and a new hope. A few days later, Sarah came to visit me. She was surprised to see the progress I had made, and for the first time in a long time, I saw a gleam of pride in her eyes. "Emily, this is amazing," she exclaimed, as she examined each plant with admiration. "I can't believe the difference since the last time I was here." He smiles shyly. "There's still a lot of work to do, but I'm starting to see results." Sarah hugged me tight. "I'm so happy for you. You deserve it." At that moment, an idea flashed through my head. "You know, I was thinking, maybe we could organize a little event here in the garden. Invite some friends and family. What do you think?" Sarah's eyes lit up. "That would be wonderful. Let's make it happen." And so, with the help of Jack and Sarah, we started planning a small gathering in my garden. With each passing day, I felt more connected to the life around me, and the garden was not only a refuge, but a symbol of all that I was overcoming. The journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long time, I felt I was on the right track. And I knew that regardless of the obstacles, I was no longer alone. The sun was high in the sky, illuminating my garden with a soft, warm light. Standing there, watching the flowers that now adorned my yard, I felt a surge of satisfaction and pride. It was far from a perfect garden, but it was mine. Every petal, every leaf, every bud represented small steps in my recovery journey. The event in the garden was about to begin, and I was nervous. Inviting friends and family to see my progress was something I would never have imagined doing months ago. Jack and Sarah were instrumental in convincing me that this could be a good idea. They believed that sharing my story could help others, just as it helped me. "Emily, look at this," Sarah exclaimed, pointing to a flower that had bloomed during the night. "You look beautiful. You did an amazing job here." "Thank you, Sarah," I replied, feeling my heart warm with the compliment. "I couldn't have done it without you and Jack." "Oh, stop it," she said with an affectionate smile. "You are stronger than you think." The first guests began to arrive, and I felt a little uncomfortable, but Jack was next to me, offering his silent support. He was a man of few words, but his presence was comforting. "Hey, Jack," I whispered. "Do you think we did the right thing?" "Absolutely, Emily," he replied, his blue eyes shining with confidence. "You're showing the world how much you've overcome. That's powerful." People began to circle the garden, admiring the plants and congratulating me on the work. Some shared their own stories of overcoming, and I was surprised at how many people were somehow touched by what I was doing. A woman named Clara approached me, holding a small plant in a pot. "Emily, I wanted to give you this as a gift. I, too, have had a difficult time, and your garden inspired me to start my own." "Thank you, Clara," he said, his eyes welling up. "It means a lot to me." As the afternoon wore on, the sense of community and support grew around me. Sarah and Jack were always around, helping with guests and making sure everything was perfect. I couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. Inspired by all the stories I heard during the event, I decided I needed to share my journey with a wider audience. That night, I sat down at the computer and started writing. I created a blog and named it Flourishing Together. The idea was to document my experience with gardening and how it was helping me cope with depression, in the hope that other people could find some comfort and inspiration in my words. The first posts were timid, but soon I began to receive comments and messages of support. People shared their own stories and thanked me for having the courage to speak out on such a difficult subject. Every message that came in was a reminder that I wasn't alone, that there was a community of people who understood and cared. One evening, after receiving a flood of positive messages, I decided to read one of the most recent comments. However, among the messages of support, there was a cruel anonymous comment that hit me like a punch in the stomach. "You will never be good enough. All this is a waste of time." I felt a lump in my throat and my vision blurred with tears. The negative words rekindled my feelings of inadequacy and sadness. I wanted to give up everything, from the blog, from the garden, from trying. I felt again defeated by depression, as if all the progress I had made was an illusion. The next day, Jack and Sarah realized something was wrong. I was withdrawn, avoided eye contact, and my smile was gone. "Emily, what happened?" Sarah asked, worried. Reluctantly, I showed them the comment. Jack read in silence, then looked at me with a serious expression. "Emily, you can't let a negative message erase everything you've accomplished," he said firmly. "Remember all the people you inspired, all the lives you touched. You are stronger than that." Sarah agreed, holding my hand. "You're not alone, Emily. We're here with you, and we'll get through this together." With the support of Jack and Sarah, I began to feel a small spark of hope again. They helped me remember that despite the difficulties, I had found new purpose and strength in gardening and the community I was building. That afternoon, I went to the garden. As I walked among the plants, I noticed something new, a small flower blooming in a corner that I had not planted. It was an anonymous gift, a symbol of hope and resilience. I felt a surge of emotions, and for the first time in a long time I cried. But they were tears of relief and gratitude. With Jack and Sarah by my side, I knew I could continue my journey, facing the challenges and celebrating the victories, however minor. Gardening and blogging became more than just hobbies. They were my salvation. And with the support of my friends, I was ready to continue flourishing, step by step, day after day. I was sitting at my small wooden desk, staring at the computer screen. The cursor flashed in the comments field of my blog, where a cruel and anonymous message awaited me. The words were sharp, cutting, and echoed in my mind like an incessant drum. "You're not good enough. All this is a hoax." With a sigh, I closed the laptop and rested my head on my folded arms on the table. The weight of depression again fell on me like a dense fog. I was on the verge of giving up everything: the blog, the garden, any hope of recovery. The thought of continuing seemed unbearable. At that moment, I heard a soft knock on the door. I raised my head and, with considerable effort, crawled to the entrance. As I opened the door, I found Jack and Sarah, both with expressions of concern. They didn't have to say anything. I knew they knew. "Emily, can we come in?" Jack asked, his voice firm but gentle. I nodded and took a step to the side, allowing them to enter. We sat in the living room, silence filling the space between us. Finally, Sarah spoke. "We are worried about you. You have done an amazing job with the blog and the garden. You can't let one cruel comment erase all that. I know it's hard, Jack added, his gaze fixed on mine. But you have helped so many people. Remember when I told you about my struggle with PTSD? Gardening saved me, and I see it's doing the same for you. Don't let it be taken away from you. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. But it's so hard, I confessed, my voice shaking. One negative comment, and everything falls apart. I feel like I'm not strong enough to continue. Sarah came over and held my hands. You're stronger than you think, Emily. Look at what you have already achieved. And you're not alone. We're here to support you. Jack and Sarah's presence, their words of encouragement, began to pierce the darkness that enveloped me. I took a deep breath, trying to find some strength within myself. I don't want to give up, but I need help. That's what we're here for, Jack said, with an encouraging smile. Let's go to the garden. There may be something there that can cheer you up. Reluctant but hopeful, I followed Jack and Sarah into the garden. The fresh air and the scent of flowers welcomed me, offering a little consolation. We walked in silence to an area where I hadn't planted anything recently. To my surprise, a new plant was blooming there, its vibrant pink petals standing out against the surrounding green. Where did this come from? I asked, perplexed. Jack bent down and picked up a small note attached to the plant. He handed it to me, and I read aloud. To Emily, an inspiration to us all. Keep blooming, just like your garden. I felt a lump in my throat as I held the note. One of my followers had left this plant as a symbol of hope and resilience. Tears, this time of gratitude, ran down my face. That's a sign, Emily, Sarah said softly. You are making a difference. Please don't give up. I knelt next to the new plant, touching its delicate petals. The feeling of renewed determination began to grow inside me. You are right. I can't let a negative comment get me down. I have a lot to do, a lot to offer. Jack smiled and put his hand on my shoulder. We are with you, Emily. Always. In the days that followed, I returned to my garden with a new energy. Every plant, every flower, every bud was a testament to my journey and my struggle. Sarah and Jack were by my side, constantly reminding me of my strength and the positive impact I was having. When I looked at the blooming garden, I realized that just like my plants, I was also growing and blooming. The journey was still long, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had found a purpose and a strength to keep going. I was finally reconciled to my past and ready to embrace a promising future, hand in hand with my friends and my blooming garden. Thank you for watching. If you felt touched by Emily's journey and believe in the power of overcoming, leave your like and share this video with your friends. Subscribe to the channel for more inspiring and exciting stories like this. And remember, no matter how difficult the situation seems, there is always a way to flourish. Comment below on your experiences and how you found strength in difficult times. Let's continue that conversation and support each other. See you next time.